Welcome to another video here on Rise and Grind Outdoors. This past week we did a giveaway on our Instagram and Facebook. If you're not following, just go type this in and you should be able to find us. So we did 5 posts about these 6 sheds. There's this one set in here. We're going to give away this shed tote. So on this video we're just going to tell you a little history about each one of these sheds, and then we're going to go through and score them. One other disclaimer is that I'm not an official scorer. I never have been taught officially on how to score these. I just basically went off the Boone and Crockett score sheet and through what I've done in the past couple years of scoring deer antlers, and that's how I've learned. So hope you enjoy this, and let's get started. This beautiful North Dakota non-typical mule deer probably was one of my first sheds I found in North Dakota. It was found in the spring of 2016, and funny story was when I walked up on this, it was laying face down. All I saw was this, and just thinking that just that little fork. You could say I was mightily surprised when I pulled it out of the grass and saw that back end on there. I don't think I've ever seen something quite like that with that nice crown and then that kicker. Unfortunately, he did break off something else right there. Would have been interesting. It looked like it was a decent tine. But it's a beautiful, still brown, obviously found that year. And then we'll score this beast up. So going over some of these measurements, we have a 22 and 1/8 inch main beam, which is kind of longer for this area. Usually we don't see much over 20. 4.5 inch base measurement, 4 1/4 inch between the 1 and the 2, 4 2/8, which would be 4 1/4 right here, and then 3 5/8 for this last final mass measurement. G1 was just under 2.5, which isn't surprising. Mule deer usually don't have much of a brow tine. Now's where it gets kind of tricky. So the G2 is this one. That was 12 7/8. Remove all this clutter. The G3 is this one. So measuring from here up this back was 8 inches. And then the little crab claw front G4 was 4 6/8. Then so these extra tines, so this would have been all extra. It gets kind of tricky in there once again. So measuring up here was 6 inches. This one doesn't count. Maybe if it wasn't broke off right there, it might have counted. Not sure. But it was under an inch, so anything under an inch isn't a scoreable tine. But extra 2, so from here out to this bird beak point was 3 2/8, and then this final little bottom beak was 1 1/4 inch, 1 2/8. Overall, it's a great buck, a lot of character. So the final total for this mule deer shed is $76 6/8. Post number 2 is this Iowa set. I'm not quite sure which year this one was found, but I know it was found on public land in northeast Iowa. It didn't hit the ground long. It didn't have a lot of color loss. Usually you can tell which way they're laying by color deformation on, like you'll see on that bigger one later. You can really tell which way that one was laying, and I actually didn't even find that one. But the only way you can really tell, which is a good indication, is by the squirrel marks. It doesn't take long in Iowa for squirrels to find them. This one, all the tine tips are chewed off, where this one has that big chew mark right there. And it also has a chew mark down there. So that one was laying like that, and that one was laying face up, tines up, tines down. Helps that I know I was there to find them. So, but that's a good indication of which way they were laying. Once again, just a nice public land Iowa buck, 10-pointer. A little weaker on this side. Who knows why? Might have been hit, might have been a little injury on its right side. But we'll get these things scored. We'll start with this left side here. So I'll just set that one to the side. Start with the main beam. So now that one's done. Go over to the right side. Once again, we'll start with that main beam. So between the sheds, we'll just do a 20-inch inside spread. Otherwise, you'd have to like hold them and then have somebody measure in between, probably like right in here. So overall, these actually are pretty symmetrical. This left one had 21-inch main beam, where this one had 20 and 2/8. I'll just do the left ones first. 2 6/8 inch brow to a 3-inch brow on the right. Obviously this G2 was a lot shorter at 4 6/8 to 7 inches. G3 once again was a little smaller on this side at 7 inches. This one was 8 2/8. And then G4s were pretty much identical at 6 4/8 and 6 2/8. Mass measurement wise, so you have your base between your G1 and G2, between your G2 and G3, and between your G3 and G4. Overall, they're within 1/8 of an inch of each other, except for the H3 measurements, which would be in between here. This one has a little bit more webbing on it compared to this one. So this one was 4 4/8, and this one was 4 inches. So with that 20-inch inside spread, the final score was Alright, shed number 3 was a typical mule deer. This nice one. Once again, this was found in the same year as that non-typical mule deer one. The good thing about this one was it was found in August instead of in the spring. But as you can tell, it still has a bunch of color I found it walking up a little drainage, and it was tucked under a cedar and in some tall grass, so you can see a little discoloration. It was chewed on a little bit by mice or a porcupine or something, but other than that, it's still a nice brown antler and a beautiful typical. It's got this cool, interesting base also. Or pedicle, I should say. But once again, short brow tine. It's going to have under that 20-inch main beam, which is typical for this area, like I said earlier. So on this one, we have 19.5-inch main beam. Like I said, a lot of the deer in this area have shorter main beams. This one's under 20, like most of them. The G1, just this little guy, was 1 3/8 inches. Pretty nice G2 at 13 6/8. Another 9 1/8 inches on the G3, or 9 1/8. G4 was 7, and then your mass measurements were 4 6/8, 4 2/8, 3 7/8, and 3 6/8, and that total is 67 3/8. Nice North Dakota typical deer. If you kind of average that out, you're looking at just under 160. He's probably not the widest buck. He's probably only 16, 17 inches wide, depending on how he sits on the head. Probably mid 150s. So some things that you may notice that I do and when I score these sheds that have just helped me is like, so you want to find this line, this imaginary line between the beam where this tine comes off. I just take my hand like this, and as you can see, it draws that line right across. Put my thumb there, and then that's where I start my tape, and then just run it up. That's one helpful hint that I've noticed that really, if you don't know, or if you want like a pretty precise, you could use a piece of tape and just put that across there also. One other thing, like when you're scoring a mule deer shed, different than a whitetail, like I said, your mass measurements are between your brow and your base for 1, between your G1 and your G2, so right in the middle would be 2. On a mule deer, it's between the main beam and where it Ys, so right there would be your 3rd mass measurement, and then your 4th would be between where your G2 comes up and your G4, so right in there. Whereas a whitetail, you'd have your brow and your base, 2 and your 1, you're between your 2 and your 3, so right there, and then between your 3 and your 4, so right there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then on the mule deer, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4. Just a little couple helpful hints on that. And then another thing, if you're using a seamstress tape, you can also use a shoestring and then use a tape measure, measure it out. The seamstress tape has this little metal end, so it's kind of hard when you're doing mass measurements if you're trying to use that metal end as your stop. As you can see, it's possible, but to get a more accurate, I just go to use the 1, you can use the 2, whatever kind of falls on. But when you pull those tight, so you can see that would be right about 4. This next shed we got is actually only one of 3 sheds in my collection that I didn't personally find. I was actually helping a guy move in Minnesota and was admiring the shed in his garage, and a shed in a shed. But I was looking at it, and he's like, "Do you want it?" I was like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah, you can have it." I was like, "Dude, are you serious? That's a giant deer." But once again, like I was saying earlier on that other whitetail set, like how you could tell, I would assume, I wasn't there, that this deer was laying tines down when he found it. As you can see on this side, there's not a whole lot of color, it's all sun bleached out, and then this side has a lot of that brown still. So I mean, obviously I wasn't there, but I'm assuming it was laying tines down. But like I said in the post, nice heavy buck, has a lot of cool character. So we'll start scoring and see what this bad boy tapes out at. So going over some of the stats on this shed, 24 3/8 main beam. It's a pretty nice beam. Doesn't get much, as you can see, it curls almost back. If you had the other side, it'd come almost to a nice point. G1 is 5 1/8. G2 was 10 1/4. This little extra was 1.5 inches. G3 was 10 1/8. This extra was 4 3/8. This G4 was 4 7/8. And then the mass on this was 4 5/8, 4 5/8. This was actually his heaviest mass measurement between his 2 and his 3. That was 4 7/8. And then this last one was 4 4/8. So as you can tell, he carried his mass out pretty good all the way to that dish. Just a remarkable buck, and I forgot to mention, one of the favorite things about this shed is that it will freestand by itself. I love it. So cool. So 79 2/8 is what this one will come out to be. So yeah, I just added up all these ones and then added up all the 3s, 1s, 2s, 1s, 7s, and came to 42. 8 goes into 42 5 times with 2/8 left over. So 79 2/8. So the 5th and final shed of this series was this North Dakota elk shed. It's found in the fall of 17 or 18. Still has some nice color on this side. It's kind of cracking out on this side, but still very good condition. Still got these nice ivory tips. But we will get this scored up, and we'll start with the main beam. Which is 51 5/8. We'll go back to this G1. 51 5/8. Which is 16 7/8. So 51 5/8 and 16 7/8. The G2, $19 2/8. The G3. Stepping on the tape. right at 12. Now this G4 was part of our guess score also on the overall length of this tine. And that's 19 3/8. I believe we had guesses of 19 and 20. So whoever gets 19, unless there was somebody that guessed in between, I'll have to check back and see. That G5 is rated at 11. So all we have left is the 4 mass measurements. That's going to be between the 1 and the 2, the 2 and the 3, the 3 and the 4, and the 4 and the 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4 mass measurements, just like on the whitetail and the mule deer. So that first one's 7 7/8. Number 2 was 6 7/8. This third one right at 7. And then the final one is 6 4/8. So we'll get these totaled up, see what this bad boy scores at. So that final total is going to be 158 and 3/8. So overall, they usually have maybe a 40-inch inside spread. You're looking at just under a 360 bull, so mid 350s, upper 350s maybe. Overall, a beautiful bull for North Dakota and or anywhere. So here's the final scores on the 5 sheds, going from post 1, post 2, post 3, post 4, post 5. That first one was that mule deer at 76 6/8. And the winning guess on that was Mike Joint on Facebook, I believe, at 78 inches. So he has 1 entry into the shed tote. The second post was that whitetail set at 138 7/8. That was Two Rivers at 139. I believe that one was on Instagram. The third one was that typical mule deer at 67 3/8. And that one was Brian at 68 4/8 on Facebook. That fourth one was that big whitetail, non-typical, that was 79 2/8. And that was Jack at 79 3/8. We also had a guess of 79, so that one, 2 people were really close. And then this final elk shed was 158 3/8, plus that G4 at 19 3/8. And the winning guesses were Hayden at 158, and then Mike also with that G4 at 19 inches. So those are 6 entries into the giveaway. So we're going to use this picker wheel to see who our winner is. Congratulations to Jack there on winning this shed tote. We'll message you on Instagram and get this sent out to you as soon as possible. For everybody else, thank you for entering and commenting on the post. We really appreciate it. And thank you for watching this video. Have a great day.